My name is Bianca. I am an activist, an artist, a sister, a daughter, a wife, a friend, and the director of operations for Lopez Urban Farm.
Where does your story begin? What moments shaped the woman you are today?
My story begins at the beginning of my life. I was born to Rafael and Monica in Pomona, California in 1988. And I was born into a really poor neighborhood and a really poor family. We didn't have a lot. Um, and because of that, we weren't always given really great opportunities, even like the schools that we went to. A lot of the time, my family had to borrow someone's address to get us into like a nicer school in a nicer area. So I think my story starts with a lot of struggle. Figuring out, my mom had to figure out how she was going to take care of me, how she was going to take care of my other two sisters, and how she was going to take care of herself. And she was a really young woman. She had me when she was around 17. My dad was really young too. We didn't have a lot of opportunities, but we made the most of things.
When did you face the fire? How did you rise from struggle with strength and grace?
Rising from struggle, right? I think struggle has continued to follow me my entire life, actually. I don't necessarily think that struggle is something that's a thing of the past. Every day I struggle, to overcome all of life's obstacles because I started off in a really tough place growing up. I have I'm continuing to face some of those same problems. I'm back in Pomona, where I'm originally from, because I love that city. But living in Pomona can be difficult because the wage gap is really high. So if you don't have a lot of money, there aren't a lot of opportunities to do well for yourself out here in Pomona. But also, just as a woman, as a Latina woman, I think um, I'm constantly faced with some of those struggles. And the way that I overcome it is I allow myself to make mistakes, and I allow myself to embrace those struggles, rather than trying to fight them or hide them or pretend that they're not there. I like to take them head on and wear them as a badge of honor. So sometimes, the struggle is okay. Sometimes the struggle is what makes things so special, I think.
How has being Latina shaped your path? In family, work, art, activism, sports, or the heart's calling?
Being Latina wasn't something that I always embraced, especially growing up. I wasn't taught Spanish. And so there were a lot of people in school that I couldn't really relate to because I had there were a lot of Mexican Americans at my school and they all spoke a lot of Spanish, right? So they kind of saw me as, maybe not Mexican enough. And then I had white friends who I wasn't necessarily white though. So it's kind of like a weird middle ground, right? I didn't really embrace my identity, I don't think, until I became an adult and I wanted to find out more about my culture, where I come from. I started to ask those questions. And I think what I have found is that um, what has really shaped me is being Bianca, right? My experience and my relationship to being Latina. So even though I don't speak a lot of Spanish, I still feel like I know who I am and I know where I come from. Um, and so I would say that the way that it has shaped me professionally is I've had to prove myself a little bit more because being Latina and being a woman kind of comes with, its own struggles in the workplace. So you kind of have to prove yourself more. You're not always heard in boardrooms or in conversations. We kind of get like the last word, right? Um, so I've had to kind of stand up straight, speak a little louder, make more eye contact, and really just kind of own who I am. And I think that that's really been helpful. And then when it comes to like shaping my decision as an artist or as a family member, um, that's where it comes back to like, who am I, Bianca, right? I'm Latina, but I'm also so many other things. And that's just kind of like one of the flavors of me is I happen to be Latina, but I also happen to be a farmer or a friend or a photographer or all kinds of things. So
What victory lights your night sky? What does it mean for you and us?
my victory. This is a hard question because I'm not great at celebrating myself, but it would be it would be wrong for me to say that I don't have some victories. Right, in the last 5 years of my life, I have been able to quit my day job and dedicate my career to caring for my community, something that I've been saying that I want to do since I was a little kid, especially growing up in Pomona. I lived off of Gibbs and Alvarado, and it was kind of a tough neighborhood, and there wasn't a lot of like things for kids to do at the time. And I got into a lot of trouble, and so did all my siblings, and so did everyone else in that neighborhood, really. And I think as I got older and I started to have I would always say when my plate was full, I was gonna go back and I was gonna make sure that the plates are full in my neighborhood because because I can relate to that. And there wasn't a lot of like activities or resources or places to be when you were little, especially in that neighborhood. So now I am the director of operations for Community Partners for Innovation at Lopez Urban Farm, and I get to spend my time creating that space for people to fill their plates, to fill their hearts, to fill their brains, to feel comfortable, to be themselves. And so, I think that that's probably fair for me to call that a victory, even though sometimes I don't really think of it that way. Sometimes I think about it as just another stop on my journey. But
When the world tried to erase you, what brought you back into your own light?
does the world ever stop trying to erase you is really the question, right? Every day I'm faced with this. Um, so, like in the context of the work that I do, sometimes at work, there are people who come in who try to be helpful to our community, but they see it through their own lens, right? They see it through the lens of whoever they are. They don't necessarily see it through the lens of the actual community members. And to me, that's kind of like an erasure. It's not intentional always. It always comes from a good place. People want to help us, but they don't really like see us, right? They don't really know who we are or what we want or, what we value as a community. Um, so I think that the way that I continue to fight like erasure on a personal level or on like a community level is to continue to like speak up even when it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not necessarily like a great public speaker or I don't really like to be the center of attention, but I have found that like in doing this work and that it's important to put yourself out there because um representation is important, and there might be other, like, young ladies in my neighborhood who can relate to what I'm going through. And if I can fight for what's important to me, that might reflect the community, and that might reflect, like, what's important to them.
What wisdom flows from you to the next generation of Latinas?
Wisdom. First of all, it's very funny to be in a situation where I feel like I'm giving any wisdom to anyone because I still feel like I'm a little kid. But I'm not. I'm 36, so I'm an adult. Uh, I think the wisdom that I can share with other Latinas of the world, not just young, but some even my own age or maybe even older, is to not be afraid to don't be afraid for the journey to be ungraceful or bumpy or awkward or maybe not even the way that you envisioned it. I think it's okay to allow things to come out differently than you envisioned them. Um, and I think once you let go of perfection and let go of holding on to making everything perfect the way you want it, you can really see what you're capable of out there. Because sometimes what you're capable of and sometimes what you're really good at is a mistake sometimes. Sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes you do your best work on accident. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to break some eggs.